There's a storm a-brewing here in Weld County, and there's actually snow falling, too. If you've been following this show for, since essentially December 14th, 2011, the second year of the tribulation, you know that we've, here on the show, been very, very concerned about some of the antics going on, not only with the United States House of Representatives, but also now with President Barack Hussein Obama, POTUS 44, where on New Year's Eve, where so many of you were distracted with Kathy Griffin's embarrassing performance there in Times Square, a more embarrassing performance, of course, happening in Hawaii while POTUS 44 on vacation, signing into law the National Defense Authorization Act. That, of course, says that all of you could be a terrorist. Not based upon evidence, but based upon the word and the powers that be going to a single chair. Our founding forefathers are rolling in their graves. The Constitution is in crisis. Freedom and liberty are being transposed for security and tighter measures. I only want to point out one story airing all across the United States today. In 1 year, the no-fly list has doubled. And everyone in the media keeps talking about this is why we need more security. I'd like to point out that people like me and people like Jesse Ventura are on that no-fly list. So it's not more terrorists, it's more people who are speaking out against tyranny. So to talk about this and to talk about other issues that affect all of us here in northern Colorado, here in Weld County, running for the 48th House District, please welcome to the Scooter McGee Show, Jeffrey Hare.
Thanks, Scooter.
Good evening.
Great to be here.
It's good to have you. I wish we could have had you here on much better circumstances, to kick off your campaign or raise some money or roast some hot dogs, but we're certainly not roasting the president, but there are some out there who would certainly like to roast him over some coals or at least, question him as to what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not only questioning what's going on in terms of signing this, the president signing this, but obviously why did Congress pass this? That's another great question that we all want to know.
93-7.
Yes, absolutely.
7 people standing up and saying this is wrong. I hate to sound like my mother, but if all your friends jumped off the bridge, would you do the same thing? And Ron Paul speaking on Tuesday at the Laurie Student Center over in Fort Collins, pointing out that other politicians, when he was talking to them about the NDAA, saying, well, how can I go back and explain to my constituents I didn't sign this? I didn't vote for this. He's like, that's your job. You're supposed to go back and explain why you didn't sign this. Because the argument, of course, is this was going to save $700 billion on military spending, which it clearly doesn't as well.
Yeah, well, that's not the first time Congress has lied about spending, is it?
No, not the first time they've lied this week, and the week isn't even over yet. So let's talk about what you were seeing with what started as H.R. 1540, which is now the National Defense Authorization Act, and how you stumbled across what I was doing over there with the Weld County Commissioners, because in all fairness, it wasn't getting played. Nobody wanted to talk about it. This is a hot potato.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing to me that the mainstream media really hasn't caught on to this and hasn't promoted and talked about it much since really the early part of this process started back in last March, and this got integrated into the NDAA. Obviously, there was some people that were talking about it and bringing it to people's attention, but it didn't get the amount of press I think that it should have, given the significant erosion of rights that came about because of it. So I was just going to do a little bit of background on the the NDAA and specifically the provision that came into effect that is most concerning. The NDAA is the Annual Authorization Act related to national defense spending, and this provision, what some people refer to as the indefinite detention of U.S. citizens, was actually a standalone bill. And then it got integrated into this, and it's one of those, riders, if you will, that gets put into a bill that a lot of the congressmen were looking at this. So they would say, well, how can I not back defense spending? And that they say is one bad apple makes spoils the whole bushel. And this was one of those things. And we had it's a few people stand up and vote against it. And sure, they have got to defend their position to their constituents. But I think this is a matter of constitutional privilege and erosion of rights. And I think those people that stood up and voted against this are statesmen. They're not politicians. They did what's right, and I applaud them for that. So the big thing, the piece of this that everybody really is concerned about is primarily Section 1021 and 1022. And without getting really technical, what that did was define, or more broadly define, what prior to this was known as terrorist or covered persons, expanding that to people that substantially support Al Qaeda. The term of substantially supported, and those that are quote unquote associated forces are really the provisions that cause people to ask the question, what does it mean, substantially supported Al Qaeda? Is Scooter McGee, the fact that he talks out against, the President of the United States or criticizes Congress, does that mean he's supporting Al Qaeda? What does an associated force mean? So those are the two kind of key provisions of this that have caused the most concern. And I've listened to your show, and we've interacted quite a bit over the last few months, and I think I have to give kudos to you, Scooter, for bringing this first and foremost to your audience, and then having the guts to stand up in our community and taking this to the county commissioners and asking them to do some research on this, which ended up ultimately resulting in a working session a couple days ago. And at that point, you certainly invited me to come, and I didn't know what was going on until I had a chance to talk to you about it, and I appreciate you informing those of us that are in your audience that this was happening. Fortunately, we live in a county, I think a county with very traditional conservative values that are concerned about constitutional rights. So our commissioners, in spite of this being kind of a hot topic and maybe one of those taboo topics to talk about, they took it on. They sat through a working session with you. They authorized or asked the county attorney, Bruce Barker, to look into this in more detail. And that's where, and a couple days ago, we sat through this working session. I was thrilled when towards the end of that session, Bruce had come up with his opinion. He had made a recommendation to the county commissioners that they should consider adopting a resolution, which essentially it's called a Statement of Opposition to the Authority Affirmed in Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012. So that's where we're at right now. Is we have a resolution on the table. The county commissioners are set to see this in their docket on Monday morning, and it's one of those things I think people need to do a lot of research on. There is a lot of concern, legitimacy to these concerns. Right here, I've got an article from ACLU. I've got an article from Forbes. I could read part of this if we had time, but. This is not a right or a left issue. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a matter of constitutional rights and constitutional privilege that everybody should be concerned about.
That was the issue that I brought. I tried to keep focus with the county commissioners, was that party politics aside, this is a problem. The President of the United States, since taking office, and I know I'm preaching to the choir because you were there, but listeners who were not there have not heard this. I said the President of the United States, when campaigning, promised that if we elected him, all legislation would be on the internet prior to signatures so we, the people, would see transparency and accountability. The President of the United States stated